Is the Trump administration really threatening to shut down the Social Security Administration? Millions of Americans could soon face serious disruptions to their benefits. Here's what you need to know. In this video, we'll break down the shocking legal battle over Social Security, the controversial ruling that sparked it, and why Elon Musk and Doge are involved in this high-stakes fight for your personal data. You'll also learn how this situation could impact your retirement, Medicare, and financial security in the long run. Stay with us until the end to understand what's really happening and how it could affect you. Welcome to Financial Area, where we bring you the latest updates on money, politics, and economic policies. If you find this information valuable, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more critical news that impacts your financial future. Now let's dive in. Judge Hollander's recent ruling has sent shockwaves through the political and financial landscape, blocking the Trump administration's attempt to access sensitive Social Security data. The administration argued that obtaining personal financial and medical records was necessary for fraud prevention, but the judge saw it differently. She ruled that there was no clear justification for such an invasive request, especially since the government already has access to anonymized data for statistical and fraud analysis. This decision effectively halted the administration's efforts to collect and use personal information without restrictions, setting the stage for a heated legal and political battle. One of the most surprising aspects of this case is the involvement of Elon Musk and Doge. The judge's ruling specifically restricts them and their affiliates from obtaining access to Social Security records unless the data is completely anonymized and randomized. The irony here is hard to ignore. While these tech moguls have been vocal about protecting their own privacy, they have simultaneously pushed for access to highly personal data belonging to millions of Americans. Judge Hollander made it clear that privacy rights cannot be ignored simply because powerful individuals or government officials want access to this information. Her ruling strongly criticized the administration's reasoning, comparing their approach to using a sledgehammer to kill a fly. In response to this legal setback, the Trump administration issued an alarming statement suggesting that the Social Security Administration could be effectively shut down. This reaction has been widely interpreted as an extreme form of retaliation, putting millions of Social Security beneficiaries at risk. While the administration claims that such a move is necessary to crack down on fraud, the numbers tell a different story. Fraud accounts for less than 1% of the SSA's budget. Critics argue that this is not about fraud prevention at all, but rather an attempt to impose unnecessary obstacles on beneficiaries, making it harder for them to access their rightful benefits. One of the key measures already being enforced is a requirement for Social Security recipients to verify their identity in person more frequently. For many seniors and disabled individuals, this is not just an inconvenience. It's a serious barrier. Closing more than 40 Social Security field offices and cutting staff has only made things worse, forcing some beneficiaries to travel long distances or navigate complex online systems they may not be comfortable using. The administration's actions have raised concerns that this is part of a broader effort to limit access to Social Security, making it more difficult for people to claim the benefits they depend on. With tensions rising, the administration's response to the ruling has drawn significant criticism. Instead of addressing the judge's concerns or presenting a revised plan that protects privacy, they have escalated the situation by threatening the very existence of the Social Security Administration itself. This latest move fits into a pattern of aggressive legal and political tactics that prioritize control over the system rather than improving it for those who rely on it most. As this battle unfolds, millions of Americans are left wondering what the future holds for their financial security. The Trump administration's approach to Social Security has sparked growing concerns that their real objective is to weaken the program rather than protect it. By imposing stricter verification requirements, reducing staff, and threatening to shut down the agency, they are making it more difficult for Americans to access the benefits they have earned. While officials claim that these measures are necessary to combat fraud, the reality is that fraud within Social Security is minimal. The overwhelming majority of beneficiaries are law-abiding citizens who depend on these payments to survive. Yet, they are being subjected to increasingly burdensome regulations that create unnecessary hurdles. For seniors, disabled individuals, and those with limited mobility, these new requirements are not just inconvenient. They could mean losing access to critical funds altogether. Beyond Social Security, Medicare is also at risk. The administration has been vocal about cutting government spending, and many analysts believe that these latest moves are a stepping stone toward reducing Medicare funding as well. With healthcare costs continuing to rise, millions of Americans rely on Medicare to afford doctor visits, prescriptions, and hospital care. If the administration succeeds in restricting Social Security access, it could pave the way for similar cuts to Medicare, leaving the most vulnerable populations struggling to afford basic health care. The pattern is clear. By limiting access, increasing bureaucratic red tape, and shutting down field offices, the administration is effectively making it harder for people to receive their benefits, all while justifying these actions under the guise of fraud prevention. The closing of over 40 Social Security field offices has made it even more difficult for Americans to get the help they need. Many beneficiaries are elderly, have disabilities, or lack reliable transportation, making in-person visits to Social Security offices a challenge. The administration's policies are pushing more people toward online verification, but not everyone is comfortable using digital systems, especially when dealing with something as important as their financial security. The expectation that all seniors or disabled individuals can navigate complex online forms, upload documents, and verify their identity without assistance ignores the reality that many struggle with technology. Instead of making the process easier, these changes are creating new obstacles that could prevent people from accessing their Social Security benefits entirely. While the administration insists that these measures are meant to save taxpayer money and reduce fraud, the numbers tell a different story. Social Security fraud accounts for less than 1% of the agency's budget, yet the government is acting as if it's a widespread crisis. Meanwhile, billions of dollars in tax cuts have been given to corporations and the wealthy, raising questions about the real motives behind these policy changes. Critics argue that by making Social Security harder to access, the administration is attempting to reduce the number of people who rely on it, effectively shrinking the program without openly admitting to cutting benefits. For millions of retirees, disabled Americans, and low-income individuals, this could mean financial hardship, medical insecurity, and a lower quality of life. As these changes take effect, the people most affected are those who have spent their entire lives working and paying into the system, expecting Social Security and Medicare to be there when they need it. The idea that they now have to fight for access to their own benefits has caused outrage among advocacy groups and lawmakers who see these policies as an attack on everyday Americans. With public pressure mounting, the administration may be forced to reconsider its actions. But for now, millions remain uncertain about the future of their financial and medical security. The Trump administration's handling of the Social Security Administration has also raised serious concerns about its defiance of the judicial system. Judge Hollander's ruling was clear. The government had no legitimate reason to access the personal, financial, and medical records of millions of Americans. However, instead of complying with the court's decision, the administration has chosen to push back aggressively, using rhetoric that undermines the authority of the judiciary. This isn't the first time the administration has ignored or challenged a federal court ruling, but this particular case is drawing attention because of its direct impact on Social Security beneficiaries. The administration's refusal to accept the decision has led to accusations that they are not only disregarding judicial authority, but also using scare tactics to achieve their policy goals. The public attacks on Judge Hollander have been swift and relentless. Some officials have labeled her as a radical activist judge, claiming that her decision is politically motivated rather than based on the law. This kind of rhetoric has become a common strategy, as the administration frequently frames judges who rule against them as partisan actors, rather than impartial arbiters of justice. Chief Justice John Roberts has previously spoken out against this pattern, warning that undermining trust in the judicial system poses a serious threat to democracy. The administration's response to the Social Security ruling fits within a broader trend of challenging court decisions that don't align with their policy objectives, creating a dangerous precedent for the rule of law. At the center of this controversy is Lee Dudick, the acting administrator of the Social Security Administration. Rather than working to implement Judge Hollander's ruling, Dudick has been accused of misinterpreting the court order in a way that justifies scaling back SSA operations. His actions have only added to the confusion and fear surrounding the situation, leading some to believe that the administration is deliberately creating chaos to push its agenda forward. By suggesting that the SSA may have to shut down in response to the ruling, Dudick has amplified the administration's claims that the judge's decision is preventing them from fighting fraud, even though the ruling simply restricts unnecessary access to personal data. As the standoff continues, legal experts expect Judge Hollander to reinforce her ruling and clarify that her decision was never intended to shut down the Social Security Administration. Instead, the order was meant to protect the privacy of millions of Americans while still allowing the government to combat fraud using anonymous data. However, the administration's willingness to twist the ruling's meaning has fueled concerns that this is about more than just Social Security. It's part of a larger effort to weaken judicial oversight. The ability of federal judges to check executive power is a fundamental part of the U.S. legal system, and the administration's repeated challenges to court rulings are raising alarms about the future of that balance. The question now is how far the administration is willing to go in defying the judiciary and whether this latest battle over Social Security will escalate further. With millions of Americans depending on these benefits, the stakes couldn't be higher. The coming weeks will likely bring further legal challenges, political maneuvering, and public outcry as the fight over Social Security, judicial authority, and government transparency continues to unfold.